Hello dear students, today let us discuss on the site selection and layout of a fruit and vegetable processing plant. When considering the setup of a fruit and vegetable processing plant, whether it be a cottage industry or a small industrial scale system, the first point to remember in mind is the infrastructure required to properly lodge all of the necessary equipments. Some time must thus be devoted to coordinate two aspects that are of vital to the development of a project of this nature, namely cost and quality of infrastructure needed to achieve the established goals. It must always be borne in mind that since the food to be processed is intended for human consumption, the infrastructure must meet several requirements. The basic general aspects of such requirements will be analyzed in this chapter. The first is the investment. The capital outlay includes investment on land, factory building, and machinery. The running or operational expenses include the cost of raw material, labor, processing, storage, transport, and distribution. As a first step, the entrepreneur should plan carefully the type and size of production which would be most advantageous. He should then decide about the plant and other equipments. The site selection. In selecting sites for the factory, the following points should be considered carefully. Number 1. Adequate quantities of the right type of fruits and vegetables should be readily available in the locality, because fruits and vegetables are highly perishable and deteriorate in long-distance transport. Number 2. There should exist proper transport facilities for the movement of raw materials and finished products. Number 3. The environment should be clean and free from debris, dust, etc. as far as possible. The site should be at a considerable distance from other industrial factories spreading soot, smoke, and disagreeable odors which would affect adversely the quality of the product. There should also be facilities for disposal of waste. Number 4. There should be scope for future orderly expansion of the factory. Now coming to the physical layout. The physical layout of a plant of this nature may be very simple, as it refers to a basic production system involving small volumes and simple products from a technological point of view. Then the production sites. Several different processes take place on the site where the production activity is performed, from the reception and conservation of raw materials to the storage of finished products. One aspect that must be borne in mind relates to construction details, which determine a plant's capacity to meet two objectives, that is, to adjust to the production of foods and to ensure a sufficiently long shelf life. The building materials must be as light as possible, easy to read off and install, considering that often the system users develop the plant themselves by means of self-construction methods. The building materials must be easy to read up because these homemade systems are rather dynamic, that is, they require frequent changes or must adjust to different processes so that the space that they occupy may be exploited all year round. On the other hand, these systems must be considered expandable to accommodate possible evolutions in time. Some of the aspects that may be considered important in relation to architectural and construction elements are listed below. The ceiling and walls of the processing room must be washable and easily dried material. They must be neither absorbent nor porous. The lighting should be natural as far as possible. However, if artificial lights must be used, they should not hinder activities on the way. Artificial lighting must be protected to prevent fragments of glass from falling into the product. Ideally, the working environment should always be appropriately ventilated to facilitate the workers' performance. Poor ventilation in highly enclosed and densely populated premises may generate defects. It is also important to provide for the elimination of heavily contaminating odors, even if they are not necessarily toxic. On the other hand, excess ventilation, especially in places characterized by great aerial contamination external to the processing site, dust and insects essentially may prove to be counterproductive. Appropriate ventilation must be based on an efficient system controlling the excess of foreign material from the external environment. The floor must be of a solid material, never earth or plant covering. Like the walls and ceilings of the processing rooms, the floor must be washable to ensure compliance with the premises' hygienic and health standards. The floor must also be sloped to allow appropriate drainage, avoiding at all costs the formation of pools in the processing area. At the same time, care must be taken to prevent the floor from being slippery. Basic installations or services. 3 basic services which are required for the operation of a system are electrical power, drinking water, and the disposal of wastewaters. Occasionally, small-scale industrial plants are equipped with a steam production system, which however is more seldom found in home processing plants. Even when a home processing plant can operate without electrical power, it is better for this service to be available essentially to facilitate the processes by means of small devices that were developed and that improve workers' performance, thus guaranteeing a greater uniformity of products. In small-scale industrial production systems, electrical energy is indispensable due to the greater degree of mechanization of the processes involved. All lights must be installed on the ceiling at a safe distance to prevent them from getting wet and getting in the way of workers in the processing room. As to water supply, the problem is slightly more critical. Sufficient drinking water must be available to ensure the development of a hygienic process, managed by clean people and with appropriately disinfected equipment. Also, many processes require water, as a result of which water of an appropriate quality must be available. Then the basic facilities. A fruit and vegetable processing plant must be set up in such a way as to rely on a number of basic facilities which are generally similar in home processing and small-scale industrial systems. Reception of raw material. The plant must be equipped with a special area for the reception of raw materials, that is, a site where the raw material received in appropriate condition may be stored until it is used in the process. This site, which may simply be a shed or a more appropriately designed rooms, must meet certain special standards in terms of temperature, humidity, cleanliness, and exposure to sunlight. Even though many spaces do preserve their integrity, their inner quality is subjected to variations if storage conditions are less than adequate. It is for this reason that the temperature must be as low as possible. That is, it must be cool. The raw material must not be directly exposed to sunlight. If the storage site is cool, it is important for the humidity to be relatively high to prevent the material from dehydrating and losing its quality. It is important to underscore that the raw material storage area must not be used for the storage of other products that may be contaminating, such as pesticides, paint, or cleaning utensils. All the waste must be kept in specially designated areas. Then the processing room. The processing room is the main facility in a plant of its type. It is here that the different materials used in the processing of raw material are stored. On such premises, a continuous production line may be set up, or simply an assembly of small machines allowing the products to be processed by hand and on a discontinuing basis. Ideally, this room should be big enough to lodge all of the necessary equipment on a continuous line, even in barely automated facilities. Even in the case of workbenches where the work is performed by hand, the process must be carried out on the basis of a continuous line to step up efficiently. The processing room should ideally be divided into areas where different functions are performed. This may be achieved by separating such areas physically. Generally, there is a dirty area, that is, an area where the raw material is washed and peeled, and where operations like pitting, coring, and the removal of inedible parts are performed. This dirty area must not extend to the section of the plant or of the processing room where the cleanness operations are carried out, like pulp extraction, grinding, cutting, and the filling of containers. One way of achieving this separation is through the use of light partitions, painted wood panels used to simply separate one area for the other. Now coming to quality control. Ideally, quality control operations should be performed in small quarters, which may also be separated from other areas by wood panels, where the basic tests required to establish the quality of a given raw material or a given process may be performed. This area should preferably be equipped with a small sink, running water, and a counter where tests may be carried out. It should be separated from the other quarters so that basic calculations may be carried out in a quiet environment. Then, the storeroom for finished products. The storeroom is fundamental in a plant of this type. It is often necessary for the product to remain under observations before being consumed. Sometimes the product must settle for a while to achieve a certain level of homogeneity, whereas in other cases the material must await labeling. Finally, in addition to being able to rely on a room where the material may be safely stored, it is also necessary to have access to a site where the process may be completed. The temperature and humidity levels must be appropriate, that is, less than 25 degrees Celsius and 60% of relative humidity, and it must be protected from foreign matter and naturally from thieves. It should be easily accessible so that tests may be performed during product's storage, and any problem may be detected on the spot. Then the next is the sanitary facilities. The conditions in which the sanitary facilities operate, the type of evacuation system serving the plant, the location of the facilities, and the sanitation plan are crucial to the quality of the process. One basic condition is for the facilities to be erected in a separate location from the area where the raw material is received and processed to prevent possible flooding. The facilities must be periodically disinfected, and the firm supervisors must exercise every strict control in this regard. Sanitary facilities must never be short of water. Its supply must be guaranteed, since the cleanliness of the toilets will determine the cleanliness of the workers, and the product's sanitary qualities will ultimately depend on the cleanliness of the workers. Now coming to the conclusion. It can be concluded that during the setting up of a fruit and vegetable processing plant, it is necessary to consider certain important factors such as investment, site, building, electricity, water supply, etc. for running successfully. The basic principles governing industrial health and hygiene, which must characterize a food production system, must never be neglected. There should be no shortage of electricity as far as possible, and sufficient drinking water must be available. There should exist proper transport facilities for the movement of raw materials and finished products.